The warning lights flashed red across the control panel. Captain Jiho gripped the arms of his chair as his ship shook violently. Something had gone wrong with the quantum drive, and now they were falling out of controlled space into an unknown system. "Hyunwoo, talk to me!" Jiho shouted to his engineer over the noise of alarms. "The drive is dead, Captain. We need to land now, or we'll burn up." Hyunwoo's fingers flew across his console, searching for any nearby planet. Jiho saw a green and blue world on the screen. It looked peaceful, with 3 moons orbiting it. "There! Can we make it?" "Barely," Hyunwoo said. The ship fell through the atmosphere like a stone. Jiho fought with the controls, trying to keep them steady. Through the window, he saw beautiful gardens below, filled with plants that glowed with soft light. They were going to crash right into them. The ship hit the ground hard. Jiho was thrown forward against his safety straps. Metal screamed and twisted. Then, finally, everything went quiet except for the hiss of cooling engines. "Everyone okay?" Jiho asked, checking on his small crew of 5. They were bruised, but alive. Slowly, they opened the ship's door. The air that rushed in smelled sweet, like flowers after rain. Jiho stepped out onto soft grass that seemed to pulse with a gentle blue glow under his boots. "Captain, you need to see this," said Taemin, their science officer. He pointed to a massive building in the distance. It was made of white stone that reflected light like a pearl. Towers reached toward the sky, and bridges connected them like delicate spider webs. "Where are we?" Jiho wondered aloud. "According to my scanner, this is Thessera, a Velaran world," Taemin said quietly. His face had gone pale. Jiho felt his stomach drop. The Velarans were one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. They didn't like unexpected visitors, especially not humans who had only joined galactic society 200 years ago. The Velorans had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. "We need to send a message. Let them know this was an accident," Jiho said. But before they could move, figures appeared from between the glowing plants. They were tall, taller than any human, with skin that looked like it was carved from crystal. Their eyes had no pupils, just swirling colors that changed like oil on water. They wore robes that seemed to be made of living light. Jiho raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "We are from Earth. Our ship failed. We did not mean to land here." The Velorans said nothing. They simply surrounded the humans with weapons that hummed with energy. Jiho and his crew were led away from their broken ship, through the glowing gardens, toward the great palace. Inside, everything was beautiful and strange. The walls were transparent, showing the gardens outside. Water flowed upward instead of down, forming pillars that held up the ceiling. Music played from nowhere, soft and sad. They were brought to a large room and told to wait. Hours passed. Jiho's crew sat nervously on benches that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Finally, the door opened. A Veloran woman entered. She was smaller than the guards, more delicate. Her crystal skin had a pink tone, like rose quartz. The colors in her eyes moved faster than the others, showing emotion that Jiho couldn't read. She wore simple robes, not the fancy clothes of the guards. "I am Alira," she said in perfect English. "I have been asked to speak with you while the Emperor decides what to do. I am Captain Jiho of the Terran Exploration Corps. This is my crew. We truly did not mean to crash on your world," Jiho explained. Alira tilted her head, studying him. "You are very young for a captain. How old are you?" 28 years, Jiho answered. "I am 312 years old, and my father still calls me a child," Alira said. Something in her voice made Jiho think she was smiling, even though her crystal face didn't move the same way as a human face. Over the next few hours, Alira asked them many questions. She wanted to know about Earth, about human culture, about why they explored space. Jiho found himself relaxing. Alira was different from the cold guards. She seemed genuinely curious. "Your species is strange," Alira said. "You have only been in space for such a short time, yet you have already made friends with a dozen other species." "How?" Jiho thought about it. "We try to understand others. We listen. We share what we have. My grandmother used to say that a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet." "Your grandmother sounds wise," Alira said softly. "She was," Jiho agreed. "She died last year." "I am sorry for your loss," Alira said, and Jiho was surprised to hear real sadness in her voice. Days passed. Yunwoo worked on the ship with Valoran engineers who were fascinated by human technology. It was primitive compared to theirs, but humans had made it work in clever ways. Jiho spent most of his time with Alira, who had been assigned as their guide and translator. She showed him the palace archives, a massive library filled with books and data crystals from across the galaxy. Jiho was amazed to find books from Earth there, including ancient Korean poetry. "You have our books?" he asked in surprise. "I collect literature from different species," Alira explained. "I find human writing very interesting. You write so much about feelings, about love and loss and hope. We Velerans used to write like this, thousands of years ago, but we have forgotten how." She picked up a data crystal and activated it. Holographic words appeared in the air, glowing softly. They were Korean characters, a poem about the moon and loneliness. "Can you read this to me?" "In your language?" Alira asked. Jiho read the poem in Korean, his voice filling the quiet library. When he finished, he saw that Alira's skin was glowing brighter, the colors in her eyes swirling faster. "What does that mean?" he asked. "The glowing?" "It means I am feeling something," Alira said quietly. "Something I have not felt in a very long time." From that moment, something changed between them. They began to spend every evening together in the archives or walking through the gardens. Alira taught Jiho about Valoran meditation, about how to quiet his mind and feel the energy of living things around him. Jiho taught her about human music, playing recordings of everything from traditional Korean instruments to modern symphony orchestras. Yuna, a human woman who worked as a servant in the palace, noticed what was happening. She had been rescued by the Valorans from pirates 5 years ago and had lived in the palace ever since. She pulled Jiho aside one evening. "Be careful, Captain," Yuna warned. "I see how you look at the princess. I see how she looks at you. But Velorans do not marry outside their caste. A princess would never marry an alien. It is their most sacred law." Jiho nodded, but his heart felt heavy. He knew Yuna was right. Yet every day he felt himself falling deeper. Alira was brilliant, kind, and curious about everything. She questioned her own culture's rules and wondered why things had to be the way they were. 3 weeks after the crash, Hyunwoo finally announced that the ship was ready to fly again. Jiho should have been happy, but instead he felt a deep sadness. He would have to leave Alira behind and probably never see her again. On his last night on Thesara, Jiho walked alone in the quantum gardens. The plants glowed around him, responding to his emotions with pulses of light. He stood under the 3 moons and let himself say the truth he had been hiding. "I wish I could marry her," he whispered to the empty air. But the air wasn't empty. Valoran hearing was much better than human hearing. Alira had been walking behind him, coming to say goodbye. She heard every word. She stepped forward into the moonlight. Her whole body was glowing now, brighter than Jiho had ever seen. The colors in her eyes were moving like a storm. "Yes," she said simply. Jiho turned, his heart pounding. "Alira, I didn't know you were—" "Yes," she said again, stepping closer. "I accept." The garden around them exploded with light, every plant glowing brilliantly. as if celebrating something impossible that was about to change the galaxy forever. The Emperor's throne room was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, and the walls showed projections of every world in the Valoran Empire. Hundreds of them, all orbiting different stars. Jiho stood in the center of the room, trying not to show his fear. Beside him, Alira stood straight and tall, her hand barely touching his. Emperor Theron looked like he was carved from diamond. His body reflected light in rainbow patterns, and his eyes were deep gold. He sat on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself, made of the same crystal as his skin. "You wish to marry my daughter," the Emperor said. His voice was deep and cold like winter wind. "A human, a creature whose species has barely learned to leave its own solar system." "I do." "Your Majesty," Jiho said, keeping his voice steady. "This is impossible. It breaks every law we have," the Emperor continued. "Father," Alira spoke up, "our laws were made thousands of years ago. Perhaps it is time to question them." The Emperor's skin flashed bright red, showing his anger. "You would throw away 10,000 years of tradition for this child?" "I would choose my own future," Alira said firmly. "As you did when you married Mother, who was from a lower caste." The room went silent. Jiho hadn't known this. He glanced at Alira in surprise. The Emperor's skin shifted from red to purple, a color Jiho didn't recognize. "That was different," the Emperor said quietly. "Why? Because she was still Valoran?" Alira challenged. "You broke tradition too, Father. You just broke a smaller tradition." "I am asking to break a bigger one." The Emperor stood from his throne. "I will think on this, but know that the court will never accept it. They will fight you every step of the way." He looked at Jiho. "Can you protect my daughter from that? Can your weak human body stand against the hatred you will face?" "I can try, Your Majesty," Jiho said. "That's all any of us can do." Something changed in the Emperor's eyes. He sat back down slowly. "I will make you a deal. Stay here for 2 months. Not as a visitor, but as an ambassador. Show my people what humans are. If, after 2 months, you both still wish this, we will discuss it again." It wasn't permission, but it wasn't a rejection either. Jiho bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The next day, Jiho's ship left the Sara with his crew aboard. Only Jiho stayed behind. Hyunwoo promised to send word to Earth Command about what was happening. Taemin looked worried, but he clasped Jiho's shoulder and said, "Be brave, Captain. You're making history." Admiral Doyen, Jiho's superior officer, sent a message 3 days later. "The Terran Confederation supports you, Captain. We are sending a full diplomatic team. Whatever happens, you're not alone." The diplomatic team arrived a week later. There was Admiral Doyen himself, a man in his 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. There was Sumin, a lawyer who specialized in interspecies relations. There was Junho, a psychologist who studied alien cultures. And there were a dozen others, all experts in different fields. "The whole galaxy is watching this," Admiral Doyen told Jiho privately. "If you succeed, it could change everything. It could show that different species can truly unite, not just make treaties." Jiho felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about him and Alira anymore. It was bigger than both of them. The Emperor assigned Alira as the official cultural liaison to the human delegation. This meant she and Jiho could spend time together without causing scandal, at least not too much scandal. They were working together, nothing more. That's what they told everyone. But everyone could see the truth. The way Jiho looked at Alira, the way her skin glowed brighter when he entered a room, the way they stood just a little too close, their hands almost touching. The Valoran court was divided. The older nobles hated the idea of a human marrying into the royal family. They whispered that humans were primitive, violent, and short-lived. Why should an immortal princess bind herself to a man who would be dead in less than a century? But the younger Velerans were curious. They had heard stories about humans, about how Earth had been broken into hundreds of fighting nations, yet somehow united themselves in just 50 years, about how humans had survived disasters that would have destroyed other species, about how humans made friends with everyone they met, even species that hated each other. Jiho began giving talks at the Palace Academy where young Valorans studied. He spoke about human history, about democracy, about the idea that every person should have a voice in their government. These ideas were revolutionary to the Valorans, who had been ruled by emperors for their entire history. But how do you make decisions if everyone has a different opinion? A young Valoran student asked. We debate, we compromise. We find solutions that work for most people, even if they don't work perfectly for everyone, Jiho explained. It's messy and slow, but it means everyone feels heard. That sounds chaotic, another student said. It is, Jiho agreed with a smile. But chaos can be creative. Order is safe, but it doesn't grow. It doesn't change. Word of these talks spread through the palace. Some nobles complained that Jiho was corrupting the youth with dangerous ideas. But the emperor allowed the talks to continue. He was watching, always watching. Alira took Jiho to the royal meditation gardens, a place where only members of the imperial family were allowed. The plants there were ancient, some of them thousands of years old. They glowed in patterns that showed the emotions of people nearby. These gardens are connected to our bloodline, Alira explained. They react to us more strongly than to others. She reached out and touched a flower that looked like it was made of glass. It burst into brilliant blue light. Jiho carefully touched another plant. It glowed softly, a gentle yellow color. What does yellow mean? Curiosity, wonder, the desire to learn, Alira said. She moved closer to him. Touch this one. Jiho touched the plant she indicated. It blazed with red and pink light, so bright it hurt his eyes. He pulled his hand back quickly. What was that? That plant shows what is in your heart, Alira said softly. Her own skin was glowing pink now. Red and pink together. Passion and love? They stood in the garden surrounded by glowing plants, and Jiho realized he had never been happier. It didn't matter that Alira was alien, that her skin was crystal and her eyes were strange. She understood him in a way no one else ever had. My people say I have forgotten how to be Valoran, Alira said quietly. They say I have become too interested in other species, too willing to question our ways. Maybe they are right. My people say I am too curious for my own good, Jiho replied. That I should focus on following orders instead of exploring new ideas. Maybe they are right too. Or maybe we are both exactly what our people need, Alira suggested. Someone willing to build bridges instead of walls. Yuna found them in the garden an hour later. Her face was worried. Princess, the court has called an emergency session. They are demanding that the emperor send the humans away. They say Jiho is a bad influence on the youth. Alira's skin flashed red with anger. Let them demand. My father makes the final decision. But when they reached the throne room, they found something unexpected. The emperor was not alone. With him stood representatives from a dozen other species. There were the Krell, insect-like creatures with multiple arms. There were the Nomari, beings made of living energy. There were even the Threx, a warrior species that rarely left their home worlds. We have heard about this proposed union, the Krell ambassador said, its translator device making its clicks into words. We wish to observe. If a Valoran princess can marry a human, it may open doors for all of us. The emperor looked troubled. This had grown beyond his control. It wasn't just about his daughter anymore. It was about the future of galactic society. I have decided, the emperor announced. Captain Jiho will face the trial of worth. 3 challenges, each designed to test the qualities we Velorens value most. If he succeeds, the marriage will have my blessing. If he fails—" The Emperor paused. "He will be exiled from Veloran space forever." Jiho felt Alira grab his hand. Her skin had gone pale, almost white. "Father, no one has passed the trial of worth in 1,000 years. You are asking him to die." "I am asking him to prove he is worthy of you," the Emperor said. "The trial begins in 3 days. Prepare yourself, Captain Jiho. You will need all of your human cleverness to survive." That night, Jiho sat with Admiral Doyen and the diplomatic team. They were all worried. Junho pulled up records of the trial of worth. Every alien who had attempted it in the last 2,000 years had either died or gone mad. "You don't have to do this," Admiral Doyen said. "We can find another way." But Jiho shook his head. "No, this is the only way. If I run now, it proves everything they say about humans being weak and cowardly." He looked at each of them. "Besides, humans are good at doing impossible things. It's kind of our specialty." Sumin pulled up the rules of the trial. There are 3 challenges. First, the labyrinth of memory, which attacks your mind with your deepest traumas. Second, the garden of eternal frost, where you must survive for 48 hours in cold that can freeze stars. Third, the debate of philosophy, where you must defeat the Empire's greatest scholar in intellectual combat. "Well," Jiho said with a weak smile, "at least they're not asking me to fight a dragon." No one laughed. This was deadly serious. Jiho could die in 3 days, and there was nothing any of them could do to stop it. Alira came to him that night. They stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing gardens. "You could leave," she said quietly. "I would understand." Jiho took her crystalline hand in his human one. "I whispered a wish in that garden. You said yes. I'm not giving up on that." "Even if it kills you?" "Even then." She pulled him close, and for the first time they kissed. It felt strange and wonderful. Her lips were cool and hard like glass, but somehow soft too. The plants in the garden below them exploded with light, celebrating something new and impossible and beautiful. The morning of the trial came too quickly. Jiho woke before dawn, his heart pounding. Through the window of his room, he could see the 3 moons setting on the horizon. He wondered if he would see them set again tomorrow. Junho came to his room early, carrying a medical scanner. "How are you feeling?" the psychologist asked. "Terrified," Jiho admitted honestly. "Good. Fear means you understand the danger. That will keep you sharp," Junho said. He ran the scanner over Jiho's head, checking his brain activity. "I've been studying the labyrinth of memory. It works by finding your deepest psychological wounds and making them real in your mind. It feeds on fear and pain." "How do I fight that?" Jiho asked. "You don't fight it. You accept it," Junho said seriously. Velorans try to suppress their emotions, to lock them away. That's why the labyrinth destroys them. But humans process emotions differently. We feel them, we understand them, and we move forward. When the labyrinth shows you your trauma, don't run from it. Face it. Hyunwoo arrived next, bringing a small device. "I'm not supposed to give you this," he said quietly. "But I found a loophole in the trial rules. They say you can't bring weapons or technology, but they don't say anything about medical devices." He held up what looked like a simple bracelet. "This monitors your vital signs, but it also has a small heating element. Not enough to warm a room, but enough to warm your body core temperature by a few degrees." For the Garden of Eternal Frost, Jiho realized. If the rules say I can't help, they should write better rules, Hyunwoo said with a slight smile. Taemin came with books and data pads. "I've studied every debate the Valoran scholars have had for the past 500 years. I've made notes on their arguments, their logic patterns, their weaknesses. It's not much, but it might help. Admiral Doyun was the last to arrive. He carried a small wooden box. This belonged to my grandfather. He carried it through the War of Unification on Earth. He opened it to reveal a simple metal compass. It doesn't work here. The magnetic fields are all wrong. But it reminded him that no matter how lost he felt, there was always a way forward. I want you to have it. Jiho took the compass, feeling its weight in his palm. Thank you, all of you. We humans take care of our own, Admiral Doyun said. You're not facing this alone. The trial was held in the Great Arena, a massive stadium in the center of the palace complex. Thousands of Velerans filled the seats, their crystalline bodies reflecting the morning light like a sea of jewels. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in special viewing boxes. This had become the most watched event in the galaxy. Jiho walked into the center of the arena. The ground was smooth white stone that seemed to glow from within. Across from him stood the 3 judges who would oversee the trial. They were ancient Velerans, their crystal skin darkened with age to deep purple and black. The Emperor sat in the royal box with Alira beside him. Jiho could see her glowing brightly, her worry visible to everyone. The eldest judge spoke, his voice amplified to fill the arena. Captain Jiho of Earth, you have requested the hand of Princess Alira in marriage. This breaks our oldest traditions. To prove your worth, you must face 3 trials. Do you accept? I accept, Jiho said clearly. Then let the trial of worth begin. The first challenge is the Labyrinth of Memory. The ground in front of Jiho opened up, revealing stairs that led down into darkness. He took a deep breath and started walking. Behind him, he heard the crowd murmuring. No alien had ever walked into the labyrinth willingly. Most had to be dragged. The stairs led to a circular room with walls made of black glass. As soon as Jiho stepped inside, the entrance sealed behind him. He was alone in the dark. Then the memories began. He saw his mother's face when she learned his father had died. He was 7 years old again, watching her cry. Feeling helpless and small. The memory hurt just as much now as it did then. The labyrinth fed on the pain, making it sharper. Jiho felt his knees weaken. He wanted to run, to hide, to make it stop. But then he remembered Junho's words. Don't fight it. Accept it. Jiho let himself feel the pain fully. Yes, his father had died. Yes, it hurt. Yes, he had felt helpless. But he had also survived. His mother had survived. They had found strength in each other. The pain was real, but so was the love that came after. The memory faded. Another took its place. He saw the first time he had failed as a captain. A crew member had died because Jiho had made a wrong decision during an emergency. He remembered the funeral, the guilt that ate at him for months. The labyrinth tried to drown him in guilt. But Jiho accepted it. Yes, he had made a mistake. Yes, someone had died. But he had learned from it. He had become a better captain. The crew member's death had meant something because it taught Jiho to be more careful, more thoughtful. Memory after memory came, each one hurt. But Jiho faced them all, accepting the pain, learning from it, and letting it go. The labyrinth couldn't destroy what Jiho was willing to accept. Finally, the memories stopped. Light appeared above him, showing stairs leading up. Jiho climbed them slowly, his mind exhausted but intact. When he emerged into the arena, the crowd was silent with shock. The judges looked at each other. No one has ever completed the labyrinth while still conscious, one of them said. Captain Jiho passes the first trial. Alira was glowing so brightly in the royal box that Jiho could see her from across the arena. The Emperor's face showed nothing, but Jiho thought he saw a flash of respect in those golden eyes. You have 1 hour to rest before the second trial, the judge announced. Jiho was taken to a medical room where Junho checked him over. How did you do it? The psychologist asked in amazement. I stopped trying to be strong, Jiho said. I just tried to be human. The hour passed too quickly. Soon, Jiho was back in the arena. This time, the judges led him to a large glass dome. Inside, frost covered everything. The temperature reading on the wall showed negative 200 degrees. You must survive inside the Garden of Eternal Frost for 48 hours, the judge explained. Most species die within minutes. Velorans can survive by entering a hibernation state. But you cannot. Your human biology will not allow it. Jiho touched the bracelet Hyanwu had given him, hidden under his sleeve. He had one small advantage, but it wouldn't be enough on its own. He would need to use every bit of human ingenuity to survive. They sealed him in the dome. The cold hit him like a physical blow. His breath turned to ice crystals in the air. Within seconds, his fingers started going numb. Jiho forced himself to move. Movement created heat. He started doing exercises, keeping his blood flowing. The bracelet warmed his core, but his extremities were still freezing. He found pieces of frost-covered plants in the dome and broke them apart. Using techniques his grandfather had taught him about surviving in Korean winters, he wrapped the plant material around his hands and feet as insulation. It wasn't much, but it helped. Hours passed. The cold tried to make him sleep. Sleep meant death. Jiho forced himself to keep moving, keep thinking. He recited poetry out loud, the words his grandmother had taught him. He sang songs from his childhood, anything to keep his mind active. When he felt himself getting too cold, he did push-ups and jumping jacks. When his muscles got too tired, he meditated, slowing his breathing and heart rate to conserve energy while staying awake. The crowd in the arena never left. They watched through the glass as this human refused to give up. They saw him fall and force himself to stand. They saw him shiver so hard his teeth broke. But he kept moving. Yuna stood in the crowd, tears freezing on her cheeks. Come on. Jiho, she whispered. Show them what humans are made of. 24 hours passed, then 36. Jiho was beyond pain now. His body was shutting down slowly. The bracelet had run out of power hours ago, but he was still conscious, still moving. Alira watched from the royal box, her skin flickering between colors so fast it looked like lightning. She wanted to run to the dome, to break it open and pull Jiho out. But she couldn't. The trial had to continue. 48 hours. The alarm sounded. The dome opened. Jiho stumbled out and collapsed on the warm stone floor of the arena. Medical teams rushed to him, wrapping him in heated blankets. He survived, the judge said, his voice filled with disbelief. No one has ever survived the full 48 hours while remaining conscious. Captain Jiho passes the second trial. The crowd erupted in noise. Some Valorans were angry, shouting that the trial was unfair, that Jiho must have cheated. But others were cheering. They had watched this human endure impossible suffering, and he had survived through nothing but will and cleverness. In the medical room, Junho worked frantically to warm Jiho's body safely. You're insane, the psychologist said with a mix of anger and admiration. You could have died. But I didn't, Jiho said through chattering teeth. How long until the third trial? 24 hours, Junho said. You need to rest. But Jiho shook his head. No time. I need to study. Taemin, give me everything you have on Valoran philosophy. That night, while his body slowly recovered from the cold, Jiho read. He studied the arguments of Velthor, the greatest living Valoran scholar. He looked for weaknesses, for assumptions, for anything he could use. Admiral Doyen sat with him. You've already done the impossible twice. No one would blame you if you couldn't complete the third trial. Yes, they would, Jiho said. The Valorans who hate me would say humans are physically tough but mentally weak. I have to finish this. Then finish it, the Admiral said. But remember, you're not just arguing for yourself. You're arguing for every human who's ever been called primitive or stupid. Show them what our minds can do. The next morning, Jiho walked into the arena for the final time. The arena was more crowded than ever. Word had spread across the galaxy about the human who had survived 2 impossible trials. Species from every corner of known space had sent representatives to watch the final debate. Jiho stood in the center of the arena, his body still aching from the cold. Across from him stood Velthor, the greatest scholar in the Valoran Empire. He was ancient, his crystal skin so dark it was almost black. His eyes swirled with deep purple colors that showed his intelligence. "Welcome, Captain Jiho," Velthor said. His voice was smooth and cold like polished stone. "I have studied your species for the past month. You are an interesting people, violent, short-lived, and emotional. Yet somehow you have convinced my student, the Princess Alira, that you are worthy of her." "I do not claim to be worthy," Jiho said honestly. "I only claim to love her." "Love," Velthor said the word like it was something distasteful. "An emotion." "Emotions are weaknesses, Captain. They cloud judgment. They lead to poor decisions. This is why Valorans have learned to suppress them." The judge raised his hand. "The debate will focus on one question. What makes a civilization truly advanced? Velthor will argue for the Valoran view. Captain Jiho will argue for the human view. Each will have 3 opportunities to speak. The Emperor and the assembled witnesses will judge who presents the stronger argument," Velthor began. "True civilization requires 3 things: order, purity, and strength. The Valoran Empire has endured for 10,000 years because we maintain strict order. Every person knows their place in society. We do not allow chaos. We do not allow weakness to drag down the strong. We preserve the purity of our bloodlines, ensuring that each generation is as perfect as the last. This is why we are powerful, why we have conquered 100-star systems, why other species respect us. Humans, by contrast, embrace chaos. They allow anyone to rise in power regardless of birth. They mix with other species freely. They celebrate their emotions instead of controlling them. This is not advancement. This is regression to a primitive state." The crowd murmured in agreement. Velthor's argument was the foundation of Valoran society. Everyone in the arena had grown up believing these things. Now it was Jiho's turn. His heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "Scholar Velthor speaks of 10,000 years of Valoran civilization. That is impressive. But I must ask, what has changed in those 10,000 years? What new ideas have emerged? What problems have been solved that weren't solved 9,000 years ago?" Velthor's skin flashed with irritation. "We have perfected our society. Change is unnecessary. Or maybe," Jiho said carefully, "change is impossible in a system that values order above all else. Let me tell you about humanity. 200 years ago, we could barely leave our own planet. We were divided into nations that hated each other. We had wars that killed millions. We destroyed our own environment. By your standards, we were the most primitive species imaginable." The crowd was quiet now, listening. "But something happened," Jiho continued. "We changed. We learned. We unified our world not through conquest, but through conversation. We solved problems not by eliminating weakness, but by helping the weak become strong. Yes, we are emotional. Yes, we are chaotic. But that chaos creates innovation. Our emotions drive us to care about others, even when it's not efficient. In 200 years, we went from a single planet to a confederation of 12 colonies. We made friends with species that had been enemies for centuries. We did the impossible over and over again, because we never accepted that things had to stay the way they were." Velthor stepped forward. "You speak of change as if it is always good, but change can be destructive. Chaos leads to suffering. Your own history proves this. Your wars, your famines, your disasters, all because you could not maintain order. You're right, Jiho agreed, surprising everyone. Change can be destructive. We have made terrible mistakes, but we learn from them. Each generation tries to do better than the last. Can you say the same? Has Veloran society improved in the last 1,000 years? Or has it simply stayed the same, perfect and unchanging and stagnant? The Emperor leaned forward in his seat, interested now. Velthor's skin had turned red with anger. You dare call us stagnant? We are the greatest empire in the galaxy. You were, Jiho said quietly. 1,000 years ago, yes. But now, the Krell have developed faster-than-light communication. The Nomari have discovered how to convert matter directly into energy. Even we humans have created medical technology that can cure diseases you've simply learned to live with. You rest on the achievements of your ancestors while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. This is the problem with allowing weakness to survive, Velthor argued. You waste resources helping those who cannot help themselves. We eliminate weakness, allowing our society to be strong. This was the moment Jiho had been waiting for. And what do you call weakness? Princess Alira questions Veloran traditions. Does that make her weak? You called my emotions weakness. But my love for Alira gave me the strength to survive your trials. The Veloran youth who attend my lectures and ask questions about democracy, are they weak? Or are they the future of your species, trying to grow beyond the limits you've placed on them? The younger Velorans in the crowd began glowing brighter, excited by Jiho's words. The older ones looked angry, but some looked thoughtful. Velthor tried a different approach. You speak of mixing species freely, but this dilutes the unique qualities of each species. Purity must be maintained. Why? Jiho asked simply. On Earth, we had societies that believed in purity. They refused to mix with others. They isolated themselves, and every single one of them eventually failed. The societies that survived, that thrived, were the ones that welcomed diversity. We have a saying, hybrid vigor. When you mix different traits, you often get offspring that are stronger than either parent. This is true in genetics, in culture, and in ideas. He looked up at the royal box, directly at the Emperor. Your Majesty, you married outside your caste. Your wife was not born royal. Yet your daughter, Alira, is one of the brightest minds in your empire. She studies other cultures, asks difficult questions, and dreams of a better future. Is she weaker because her mother came from a lower caste? Or is she stronger because she carries both noble vision and common wisdom? The Emperor's expression didn't change, but his skin shifted to a thoughtful blue color. Velthor made his final argument. Even if I accept your points about change and diversity, there remains one insurmountable problem. Humans are short-lived. You will age and die while Princess Alira remains young. She will watch you wither and perish. This is cruelty, not love. It was the strongest argument yet. Jiho felt it hit him hard. He had thought about this himself, late at night when he couldn't sleep. Alira could live for thousands of years. He would be lucky to reach 100. But then he remembered something his grandmother had said at his father's funeral. Scholar Velthor, you see my short life as a weakness. I see it as a gift, Jiho said softly. Because I will only live 80 or 90 years, every moment is precious. I cannot waste time on hatred or pride. I must love deeply and completely because I don't have thousands of years to put it off. Yes, Alira will outlive me. She will have to say goodbye to me. But isn't a short time filled with real love better than a long time filled with emptiness? He turned to address the entire arena. Velorans live for thousands of years, yet you've forgotten how to truly feel. You suppress your emotions because you think they make you weak. But emotions are what make life worth living. Joy, sorrow, anger, love. These things give life meaning. I would rather have 50 years of real feeling than 10,000 years of cold perfection. The arena was completely silent. Even Velthor had no response. Jiho continued, his voice growing stronger. You ask what makes a civilization truly advanced? I say it's not how long you survive or how many planets you control. It's how much you grow, how much you learn, and how much you care. It's the courage to change when change is needed. It's the wisdom to know that being different doesn't mean being wrong. It's the strength to feel deeply, even when it hurts. By these measures, humanity may be young and small, but we are advancing every single day. Can you say the same? He looked at Velthor directly. I respect Valoran civilization. Your art, your science, your history are all magnificent. But respect doesn't mean copying. I don't want Alira to become human, and she doesn't want me to become Valoran. We want to build something new, something that combines the best of both our peoples. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be? Two different beings becoming stronger together? Velthor stood silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. I have debated thousands of beings over my long life. I have defeated every argument against Valoran superiority. He paused, and his skin shifted to a pale blue color, showing uncertainty for the first time. But I find I cannot defeat yours, not because your logic is perfect, but because your truth is different from mine. You have shown me that there are multiple ways to define advancement. I do not agree with all you have said, but I acknowledge the strength of your position. The judge stood. This is unprecedented. Scholar Velthor has acknowledged his opponent's argument. The debate is concluded. He looked at the Emperor. Your Majesty, the decision is yours. The Emperor rose from his throne. The entire arena held its breath. Captain Jiho of Earth, you have survived the labyrinth of memory through acceptance. You have endured the garden of eternal frost through cleverness, and you have challenged our greatest scholar through wisdom and honesty. He paused, and for the first time, Jiho saw the Emperor's skin glow with warm gold. You have proven yourself worthy not through Valoran standards, but through human ones. And perhaps that is exactly what we need. The Emperor looked at his daughter, who was glowing so brightly she looked like a star. Alira, do you still wish to marry this human? More than anything, father, she said. Then you have my blessing, the Emperor said. The arena exploded with sound. Some Valorans were shouting in anger, but more were cheering. The younger generation glowed with excitement. The alien ambassadors were transmitting the news across the galaxy. Jiho's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees, exhausted and relieved. Alira ran from the royal box, her royal dignity forgotten. She reached Jiho and pulled him into her arms. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. We did it, Jiho corrected, holding her close. Above them, the 3 moons had risen, and they glowed brighter than anyone had ever seen, as if the world itself was celebrating. The weeks following the trial were chaos of the best kind. News of the Emperor's approval spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Some species celebrated, seeing it as proof that old barriers could fall. Others condemned it, calling it the beginning of the end for traditional values. But everyone was talking about it. The wedding preparations began immediately. Alira insisted that the ceremony should blend both human and Valoran traditions. This isn't just about us, she explained to Jiho as they looked at design plans. This is a symbol. If we can merge our cultures respectfully, others can too. Suman, the human lawyer, worked day and night on the legal framework. The marriage wasn't just a personal union, it was an official alliance between the Valoran Empire and the Terran Confederation. Every word in the treaty had to be perfect. We're writing history, Suman told Jiho one evening, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "This treaty will be studied for thousands of years. It has to be right." The treaty included provisions for cultural exchange programs, shared scientific research, and mutual defense. But more importantly, it included a clause that Alira and Jiho had insisted on. Any species in either nation could petition for the right to marry outside their species. The process wouldn't be easy, but it was now possible. Yuna helped Alira design her wedding gown. It was a masterpiece that combined Valoran technology with human artistry. The base was made of bioluminescent fabric that shifted colors with Alira's emotions. Over it, Yuna had embroidered traditional Korean patterns in thread that was actually living crystal, grown in the palace gardens. "Your mother would have loved this," Yuna said softly as she worked. "She always believed in bringing different worlds together." Alira's mother had died 50 years ago, long before Jiho was even born. But Alira still missed her. "She married my father when he was from a higher caste and she was just a scholar. Everyone said it was wrong. But they loved each other, and that love changed the court, made it a little more accepting." She touched the dress gently. "I wish she could see this." For Jiho's outfit, Hunwoo had created something special. It looked like a traditional Korean hanbok, the kind Jiho's grandfather had worn at his own wedding. But woven into the fabric were quantum threads, technology so advanced it could only be made in Valoran laboratories. The threads created patterns that shifted and flowed, showing the union of human tradition and Valoran innovation. "You're going to look like a prince from a fairy tale," Hyunwoo said with a grin. "A nerdy prince who nearly froze to death, but still a prince." The guest list for the wedding was enormous. Every species in the galactic community wanted to attend. The Emperor decided to hold it in the Quantum Gardens, where Jiho and Alira had first confessed their feelings. Engineers worked to expand the space, creating viewing platforms that could hold thousands while keeping the intimate beauty of the garden intact. 3 days before the wedding, Jiho's family arrived from Earth. His mother stepped off the shuttle, looking overwhelmed by the alien world. Jiho ran to her and wrapped her in a hug. "Mom, I'm so glad you're here," he said. She pulled back and looked at him with tears in her eyes. "My son is marrying a princess, an alien princess. I don't even know how to process this." "One step at a time," Jiho said with a laugh. "Come on, I want you to meet Alira." The meeting between Jiho's mother and Alira was awkward at first. How do you make small talk with a being made of crystal who's 300 years old? But Alira had studied human customs extensively. She bowed in the traditional Korean way, showing respect to an elder. "Mrs. Park," Alira said in careful Korean, "your son is the bravest person I have ever met. I promise to honor him and care for him all my days." Jiho's mother started crying. "I can't believe my baby boy is getting married, and I can't believe I'm getting an alien daughter-in-law who speaks better Korean than he does." The ice was broken. Soon they were laughing together, sharing stories, finding common ground in their love for Jiho. The Emperor invited Jiho's family to a private dinner. It was strange, seeing the powerful ruler of an empire eating with Jiho's very ordinary family, but the Emperor was gracious, asking questions about Earth, about human culture, about what it was like to raise a son who became a starship captain. "He was always curious," Jiho's mother said, "always asking questions, always wanting to know why things worked the way they did. I used to worry he would get himself into trouble." "He did," the Emperor said, with what might have been amusement. "But he also got himself out of it." On the night before the wedding, there was a traditional Valoran ceremony where the bride and groom meditated separately, preparing their minds for the joining of lives. Jiho sat in a quiet room with Admiral Doyeon, Hyunwoo, Taemin, and Junho. His friends had become like brothers during this strange journey. Are you nervous? Taemin asked. Terrified, Jiho admitted. What if I'm not good enough for her? What if I fail? You already faced 3 impossible trials, Junho pointed out. Marriage can't be harder than that. Marriage is different, Admiral Doyen said seriously. The trials tested your body and mind. Marriage tests your heart every single day. It's not about being perfect. It's about choosing to love someone even when it's hard. My grandfather used to say that marriage is like piloting a ship through an asteroid field, Hyunwoo added. It's going to be difficult sometimes. But if you trust your co-pilot and work together, you'll make it through. In another room, Alira sat with the palace's elder women. They were teaching her the ancient Velaran marriage vows. But she kept thinking about the human vows Jiho had taught her. For better or worse, in sickness and health, until death do us part. Death would part them. Much sooner than any Valoran marriage would end. The thought made Alira's skin glow with sadness. The eldest woman noticed. You are thinking about his short life. How can I not? Alira whispered. I will have him for maybe 50 years if we're lucky. Then I will live for thousands of years without him. Is that fair? Fair, the elder woman said. Child, life is not fair. Love is not fair, but it is still worth it. Better to love and lose than to never love at all. Your mother taught you that. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. The 3 moons were all visible in the daytime sky, a rare occurrence that the Valorans considered extremely lucky. The quantum gardens had been transformed into something magical. Flowers glowed in every color imaginable. Streams of water flowed upward, creating arches of liquid crystal. Representatives from 40 species filled the viewing platforms. There were the insect-like Krell, the energy beings called Nomari, the warrior Threx, and dozens more. Everyone wanted to witness this historic moment. Jiho stood at the altar, wearing his quantum-threaded handbok. Admiral Doyen stood beside him as best man. Jiho's hands were shaking. Then the music started. It was a blend of Korean traditional instruments and Valoran crystal chimes. The sound was otherworldly and beautiful. Alira appeared at the edge of the garden. She glowed so brightly in her dress that she looked like a walking star. Yuna walked beside her, carrying the train of her gown. Slowly, they made their way down the path toward Jiho. When Alira reached him, Jiho forgot how to breathe. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The ceremony was conducted by the Emperor himself, a rare honor. He spoke in both Valoran and English, so everyone could understand. We gather today to witness the joining of 2 lives, 2 species, 2 worlds, the Emperor began. This is not just a wedding. This is a promise that our differences make us stronger, a promise that love can bridge any gap, a promise that the future holds infinite possibilities. Alira and Jiho had written their own vows. Alira went first, speaking in Korean. Jiho, you showed me that life is not about how long you live, but how fully you live. You taught me to question, to grow, to feel deeply. I promise to love you with all that I am, for all the time we have. Your life may be short by my people's standards, but I know it will be the most meaningful part of my long existence. Jiho's eyes were wet with tears. He spoke in Valoran, the language he had been studying for months. Alira, you are my impossible wish come true. You saw potential in me when others saw only a primitive human. You chose me when you could have chosen safety and tradition. I promise to make every day we have together count. I promise to love you, challenge you, and grow with you. I promise that when my time comes to an end, you will have memories that will keep me alive in your heart forever. They exchanged rings. Jiho's was made of crystal from the Velaran royal mines. Alira's was made of metal from Korea's mountains, engraved with both their names. By the power given to me and witnessed by 40 species across the galaxy, I declare you joined in marriage, the Emperor said. You may seal your vows. Jiho and Alira kissed. The quantum gardens exploded with light, every plant glowing its brightest. The crowd erupted in cheers and strange alien sounds of celebration. Music played, a fusion of human and Velaran instruments creating something entirely new. The celebration lasted for 3 days. There was dancing, though humans and Velarans had very different ideas about what dancing meant. There were speeches from ambassadors who spoke about the hope this marriage represented. There was food from a dozen worlds, carefully prepared so that everyone could eat safely. On the 3rd night, Jiho and Alira stood on a balcony overlooking the gardens, watching the 3 moons rise. They were finally alone. "What happens now?" Alira asked softly. "Now we live," Jiho said. "We build a life together. We help our peoples learn from each other. We proved that this was the right choice." "Are you scared?" Alira asked. "Every day," Jiho admitted. "But I'm also excited. We're going to do things no one has ever done before. We're going to raise children who are both human and Velaran. We're going to show the galaxy that unity is possible." Already news was coming in about the impact of their marriage. Young Valorans were questioning the caste system. Humans were signing up for cultural exchange programs in record numbers. The rigid walls that had separated species for thousands of years were beginning to crack. 5 years later, Jiho and Alira had their first child, a daughter they named Mina. She had her mother's crystalline skin but her father's warm brown eyes. She was proof that 2 species could create something beautiful together. 10 years later, the Valoran Empire had reformed its laws, allowing citizens to marry whomever they chose. The caste system was being slowly dismantled. Young Velarans spoke about the age of change that the royal wedding had sparked. 20 years later, Jiho became the first human ambassador to the Velaran Empire. He and Alira traveled between worlds, teaching, learning, and building bridges. Their children, now grown, followed in their footsteps, becoming diplomats and teachers themselves. 50 years later, on a quiet evening in their home overlooking the quantum gardens, old Jiho held his wife's hand. "I don't regret a single moment," he said. His hair was white now, his face lined with age. Not one. Alira's crystal skin had not changed at all. She would remain young for thousands of years more, but her eyes held a depth of feeling that young Alira had never known. "Neither do I," she said. "You gave me a gift, Jiho. You taught me how to feel again, how to truly live." "I wish I had more time," Jiho said softly. "We had enough time to change the galaxy," Alira replied. "That's more than most people get." When Jiho finally passed away at the age of 83, the entire galaxy mourned. His funeral was attended by thousands. The Emperor himself gave the eulogy. "This human showed us that strength comes in many forms," the Emperor said. "He was not the strongest or the longest lived, but he had the courage to love, the wisdom to question, and the heart to believe that impossible things were possible. He changed us all." Alira lived for 3,000 years after Jiho's death. She never remarried. She didn't need to. Those 50 years with Jiho had filled her heart with enough love to last forever. She became a teacher, spreading the lessons they had learned together. And in the quantum gardens, where Jiho had once whispered an impossible wish, a memorial stood. It was a simple statue showing a human man and a Velaran woman hand in hand, reaching toward the stars together. The inscription read, "Love knows no boundaries, hope has no limits. The future belongs to those brave enough to build it together." And every year, on the anniversary of their wedding, the plants in the garden would glow their brightest, as if remembering the day when 2 impossible hearts became one.